Grab your band-aids, Wargamers, because today we're doing terrain, and it's not a murder mystery. Take a look at what we're going to build. But before we do, since we're doing a desert-themed terrain, we need to start with a drop cloth. The only one I've got is suitable more for kind of a European style or American style. Nice green grass and nice green lawns with a little bit of brown in there. Here we're going to do more of a desert style. Maybe do some Black Ops. Definitely going to be doing some fantasy on this one, maybe some science fiction. I'd like to do some pulp, some Egyptian style adventuring, two-fisted heroes kind of stuff. That's for later. For now, we just want to make sure we've got a little bit more variety available to us. So we're using just some basic matte spray paint on a fleece. This is kind of the nice worn jammy material, and it's got a little bit of fuzz to it, so that gives you a little bit more irregularity to it. Kind of a grassy, once the paint sticks to it, it rolls around a little bit. It's going to add a little bit of texture to the surface. Not quite as flat, not quite as regular as canvas, which holds up great, takes paint like a champ, but this stuff just has a slightly more naturalistic feel, and you don't have to do as much work as you do with the teddy bear fabric, the nice fur fabric that you can get in there with a trimmer and trim down to size. For colors, we're using, I start with a light brown, then go with a dark brown. Some people think that you want to go just dark brown and then medium brown and then, some progressively lighter shades. This is the earth we're talking about. It's not a miniature. There's no shadows. Not so much, not so many shadows to speak of, not like on a miniature. So for this, you really want more of a mottled appearance. I went dark to light, and then I walked back down to dark again, so that we've got a little bit of layering. And as you can see, I'm going to grab a little bit more yellow, and I'm going to dust the top with just a little bit more yellow. So you've got yellow on brown on yellow on brown. And I used a little bit of gray just to add a little bit of uniqueness in there. That way it's not just the same hue. One more. It's looking a little too bright. Trying to focus on the areas where that khaki shows up a little bit too plainly, a little bit too vanilla. A little concerned about where those clothespins are. When I take those off, there's going to be little paint shadows that we'll have to go back and touch up by hand. And I don't know if we're going to be able to completely mimic this, but it was a windy day, and ta-da, I didn't want that paint going all over the place, so hung some fabric up on top of the fence and went to town. Here you can see on the left is the green drop cloth, and here looking at underneath you can see the difference in the shade of the two drop cloths. The desert, I went a little bit lighter than the green. Probably could have used a little bit of green on that desert cloth as well, just to add a little bit more variety to things. And there is a little bit of green in every desert, aside from like the sand dunes of the Sahara. That green can make a big difference for tracking as a ground cloth. The fire pit that you're looking at there is actually a 10 millimeter figure from Pendraken. The rocks are from my yard, and the tent is from Gamecraft Minis, gcminis.com. I think it's probably a 3D printed figure, but it doesn't have any of the usual striations that you see. High quality, very light, which I love. I am going to try to pack all of this desert terrain into a single small plastic tub, about shoebox size. Remember that my terrain goal is to be as compact as possible and try to get as much variety into a single standard size container tub as possible. And to do that, all of my terrain does double duty. I know yours does too. Not telling you anything particularly groundbreaking here. Just kind of walking you through my process so you can see how I do it. Maybe you've got the craft table set to do some painting of your own, and you want to see how the guy next door does his stuff so you can look for ideas to steal, or look for lessons to learn. Lessons like always cut away from yourself. That's a good one for the next video. Get that all lined up. We're just going to tuck it out of the way while that dries. We want that glue to get to be a little tacky. We're going to grab a column. This is an Egyptian style, and I bought this off a seller on Etsy. It's specifically 15 millimeter. If you game in 28 millimeter, you can get these exact same plastic terrain for your own ancient Egyptians, or maybe Tomb Kings, or if you're doing some pulp adventures out in the desert. Very cheap. I think it was like $12. It comes with all kinds of stuff. I'm lining these up because I want my columns to be kind of the Appian Way style, where it leads up to the Valley of Kings or the Houses of the Dead. Oh, look, it's ancient Egypt, and it hasn't been... Oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and put that pointing to the inside so that our terrain, our blocking terrain, our cover for our guys all lines up nice and neat. A little bit of fine-tuning adjustment, and then we're going to let that get tacky. I didn't put a lot of rocks on this one because the builders didn't put them there, and there's no reason to move anymore. One thing I'll say is that I look for unusual shaped rocks out in the garden when I pick those up, and the ones back there by the tent, that is a 15 millimeter Space Alien figure. It's actually Chicken Joe. I picked some flat top rocks. I'm not going to base these. They're already flat enough as it is. Flat top. Kind of thing that you'd want to sit on as you were roasting marshmallows. Here you can see the striations. This is obviously a 3D printed figure, and I mean, it's going to paint up just fine. It's going to look like sandstone. I actually like the striations in that case. Those little horizontal lines are going to give it a little bit more texture, make it look like it was carved out of the solid sandstone rock. Now we're going to move on. We're going to do some sand dunes. And the piece of plastic that you see there is a speed bump. It's a warning. Oh, wait, what did I forget? I forgot something. I don't know what it is. I'm going to move this in. And a bag of sand, just beach sand. It's a little bit coarser than I would have liked, but that's all right. The texture is going to be fine. It's close enough. As I was saying, the white hemisphere that you see there, it's not a hemisphere, it's a little dome shape, and probably a little too steep for the 15 millimeter figures. If it is, great. It's you can't walk on it. It's blocking terrain for both sight and movement. That's okay. It's going to basically turn into a maze of dunes out there on the edge of the Sahara, and that's fine. So I used a little disposable paintbrush to spread my white glue. It's just simple PVA craft glue. Get it on sale. Time of year, you know, it's fall time right now as I'm filming this, so it's like 50 cents. I know a lot of guys say, oh mate, here's your thin down water and PVA. Not sure what the water's for. I think when you're gluing things on wood or to other bases, it flows a little better maybe, but this is really basic stuff, man. I just need to get a full coat of PVA on this plastic. You can get these at the safety store. My day job, one of the hats I wear is as a safety guy, so I was working on a project and found these. I think they're fantastic. They're like $2 a piece. They're very lightweight, which is important because when you're working with real sand like this, it does get heavy. One of the things you can do, if you don't have access to these, you can mix in water, glue, and sand, and it forms a bit of a paste, and you can mold it. You let it get a little tacky for about 10-15 minutes. Wet your fingers down, and you can really shape it. I mean, it's great stuff. The only problem is that the weight starts to add up, and using a plastic base instead of just simply molding my dunes together is going to save a lot of space, a lot of weight, I should say. If you miss any spots, that's fine. Just dab a little glue on, and there's maybe a little bit too much sand on there. As it dries, it'll thin out on its own accord. My dunes there may be a little bit too regular. You can see they're all perfectly round. They're all the same size. Hey, sometimes nature does that, and that's all right. It tracks as a sand dune. Not too worried about it. While I, ran off and did some stuff with the kids, let this dry. It's not entirely dry, as you'll see in a little bit, as I add glue to this base. I'm going to grab a Q-tip. Q-tips cost like 1/4 cent a piece. Great. It's got that great cotton tip that once you get a little glue on there, sometimes you can even tease it out, kind of spin it a little bit. And what you find happens is you get a little tail of cotton that you can drag along behind the stick, and as it drags along, it'll work its way into every little nook and every little cranny. And you know, the sand will get caught in there, the glue gets dragged in, and it really makes it easy to cover up those seams and hide those seams. Yeah, see those rocks are moving around. I can kind of fine tune it a little bit. I like to do that this step, just a little bit tacky, so I can make those little adjustments. Again, the fire pit there, you can see I already painted it once. I'm going to paint it again. It'll be all right. It's deep enough. It's a great sculpt. It's by Pendraken, I believe. It's from their line of fantasy. I think they sell a full fantasy camp, little bits and bobs and doodads. Looks great, good size. A little bit on the small side, which is good. That tent is a little bit on the small side, which is good. Looks like a tent once we get it painted. Probably just do like a nice white canvas to make it jump off the base there. A little bit too much sand in a couple of areas, so I grabbed a clean, dry Q-tip, and I'm just brushing off those last few little particles of sand. You'll see here in a second, I'm going to go ahead and just attack that tent and kind of drag the sand down, just push it down. Yeah, it's going to blow up against the tent, so that's fine if there's a little bit on there. Got a little bit too high, a little bit too thin of a layer. So by dragging it down like you see, it just makes it look like it was blown into place. Very natural, very nice. He's very nice. I'm going to use a nice dark brown. In fact, the dark brown that you saw on the drop cloth, that's going to be my base coat for all of these. I like to use black or white for the figures, but since this is a ground surface, since this is going to be earth underneath it, if I miss any spots as I'm doing my actual painting, it's going to be fine. The dark brown is going to look like the surface of the earth. Got to protect that granite countertop, and here we're going to do the exact same thing again. Just a little dab will do ya. Gonna grab our Q-tips, one-stop shop, easy. You can just throw it away. Very cheap, just tuck it in there as best we can, and it's okay if it doesn't completely fill up underneath there. Obviously, the point of that broken column is it's okay if it doesn't touch the ground. We got enough glue on there. That's one of the other things I should point out, is that by really digging the glue into the sides there, it's gonna give more grip to the plastic terrain pieces. It's not just underneath, it's along the sides a little bit as well. It's going to take a lot of abuse. One of the bigger concerns here is going to be that I've got exposed sand, and you wouldn't want to use your figures on that sand. You might think, oh, hey, it looks good. You're done. The sand dunes over there on the right-hand side. You're not done, because you don't want to use your figures on this. It's quartz. It's broken glass, and your figure's going to get all dinged up and chipped up. When I'm done painting it, I will go ahead and use a varnish on it, and that'll kind of soften it a little bit. The paint's going to soften some of those harsh edges as well. So I'm not too worried. I've been doing this for a long time, and the sandpaper that results is not as hard on your figures as you might imagine. Particularly if you use this for ground cover that you're going to put static grass on, the static grass is going to be another layer of protection between your figures and the really harsh edges of this sand. Again, a little bit too much of a seam there. I didn't like that. I wanted to kind of make it look like that column had been buried for 6, 7, 8,000 years. So pile a little more sand up there, and you're off to the races. You can see that I don't put sand around the beveled edge. That is masonite. I cut that, sanded it to size, just gave myself a nice selection to work with here for this desert. I was thinking about it, it's like every other battle. You got to be thinking three steps ahead. Hey, look at that. It focused. How about that, huh? What do you know? Sometimes autofocus actually works. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. Oh, you see the little sand on there? We're going to go ahead, now that we looked at it up close, yep, we're going to dust that off. It's kind of hard to get the sand off once it dries with PVA. It's hard on your X-Acto knives. And, time for a little bit of cleanup. As I was saying, the beveled edges there, I actually don't put a lot of sand on those. I think the beveled edges look great, just like you see it. They're going to be nice dark. We'll soften it a little bit, but it definitely draws a line around the terrain piece. And maybe not such a big deal for these columns and that tent, which are fairly static, and the base is really just for stability and to make it easier to set the terrain up. It'll keep those narrow, tall columns from falling over. But for something like the vegetation you see in the upper right-hand corner, we're going to see how we put that together in the next episode. But for something like that, you can say, look, this whole piece of terrain is rough ground. The piece of terrain that it's totally not Mad Max and a denim jacket is standing on, that you could probably say, yeah, it's a camp. That whole thing is rough ground. Everything outside the beveled edge is smooth ground. Everything inside is rough ground. And now the rough ground rules get triggered. So I kind of like having that clean border around it. It also, over time, I found if you put sand on that beveled edge, it's just going to get worn off. Those edges are going to take the brunt of the damage from your daily use, and it's just easier. It looks great, looks consistent. If you just, and that's the big thing, is be consistent. However you want to do this, do it like that every time. It looks like it's on purpose. It looks uniform. It looks intentional, and it just everything ties together really well. So. As with so much of what we do in life, when it comes to the joy of wargaming, when it comes to the joy of terrain making, if you look like you know what you're doing, people are going to assume you know what you're doing. And if you just maintain consistency, then sometimes that's all you need. It's going to look good. There's Chicken Joe on the left-hand side there. I wanted to show you how tall those dunes are. Again, I don't think the figures are going to be able to stand on the sides of those dunes, so they may be impassable. I don't know. Kind of depends on the game, I would think. What else can I tell you? I think that's really about it. Again, the search for Egyptian terrain on Etsy, and you'll find there's like 3 or 4 different people selling these columns. The rocks are from my garden. The fire pit is from Pendraken's 10mm line, and the tent is from gcminis.com. That's Gamecraft Minis. The figure on the left is from the post-apocalyptic section of Coruscant Miniatures. I think he's supposed to be kind of a Mad Maxy looking dude, but I brighten him up for a more sci-fi space opera flavor. Chicken Joe over there on the left is an alternative armies miniature. And for the life of me, I can't remember which line he's in at the moment. Just poke around, and it might be Hoff, H-O-F. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. And honestly, even if I knew, I might not tell you, just because you should go look at Alternative Army's website. They've got all kinds of great stuff buried to there. Just scroll through and you'll find something a whole heck of a lot of fun. Anything else? I think that's about it. As far as paint schemes are concerned, I did the drop cloth. I know what color the drop cloth is. Now I have a much better idea how to start off painting these terrain bases so they more or less match that drop cloth, but they don't have to exactly. If the colors are a little bit off, that's fine. Remember, the terrain has rules effects, and you need to kind of capture people's attention. So if it's a little bit off, and again, the terrain is something different. Right? You've got your drop cloth. That's how the world is. The terrain pieces, hey, this is something different. So if it stands out a little bit, that's not actually a problem. Just like in real life, you want your terrain to stand out. You want to stand out. So, had a great time. Probably could have done this a little bit easier, a little bit faster if I had just bought this stuff pre-made, ready to go, fresh out of the box, pre-painted. But where's the fun in that? I mean, the craftiness is a big part of this hobby, both when it comes to tactics and when it comes to the tactics of terrain construction. So don't be afraid. I made a couple of mistakes throughout the course of this video that I didn't show you. Just simple stuff, really, that was easily compensated for, the kind of problems you can solve on your own. And that's really about it for today. Look for the vegetation next time. Thanks for watching along with me. Hope I was able to keep you company on your commute, on your own painting. And until we get to the next terrain, remember, I am praying for you.